Hi everyone, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography editing live stream where you can submit your images before the stream starts, and I edit them here for you live using DxO Photolab 9. And they're continuing their promotion for Black Friday, i.e. Cyber Monday now, for discounts on Photolab, Pure Raw, and all of their other products. And if you use my affiliate link with discount code below, you get an additional 5% off. And this primarily applies, I think, to new customers. There are also discounts for existing customers of DxO that either want to upgrade or add additional products like Nick Collection or something like that. But best thing to do is just try the affiliate link and then also try the coupon code and see what happens. But either way, I think the products are all excellent. I've been using them for many years now, not exclusively, but I would say probably for better than 90% of my photo editing, I'll use the DxO Photolab products. So we got a lot of images today. Some of you submitted more than one images. So I'm just going to do one, and if I have time, I'll try and do a couple more. But try to submit only one image. And I did get your email, Heather. I only saw one image file, though. You said there were two you wanted to consider. I only saw one, so I downloaded the one. So I'll get to that. And I see Bomsem is here, and Dan, and Heather, Paul, good to see you all. And okay, Jeff, and a few others, but let's go ahead and get started. Let me get my screens arranged so that everything looks right. And if I push this button, it should go to the photo editing screen. So what I'll try to do is, again, as always, I try to walk you through my thought process, and you can watch my workflow and the tools that I use to edit your photos. And I'm going to edit them just as if they were my own photos. So this is not a critique or, criticism of any of your photography. In fact, a lot of times your photos are awesome, much better than I would ever do. But the point is just to show you the tools in DxO. So if you're new to DxO or recently purchased it, there's no better way than to look at the, just kind of watch over my shoulder and see how I edit the photos. And if you're considering DxO, again, I have my affiliate links down below, and you can submit your images and I can see how to edit your images. I think it's better than, creating a video that sort of cherry picks images and highlights the features of DxO. I like to work with people's actual images and demonstrating the product. But that said, we'll start off here. I have one here from Larry, and we have a moonshot. And I also like to give thoughts on camera settings and things like that, how I might do it differently. And also let me know if the audio and video looks okay. Hopefully everything is set now so that I can consistently get good video and audio. You would think after 10 years I would have this down right, but it's always constantly changing. Okay, so for a typical astro shot, what I like to do is just, I'm gonna, a moonshot I should say, is I'm gonna apply basic preset. This is very similar to the default preset in DxO, except that I tweaked it a little bit. And I'll make my presets available at some point. But I'm just going to go ahead, and I like to think about the geometry in a photo first, straightening horizons, if I'm going to crop it square or landscape. And then I think about the exposure and the white balance. So in this case, the exposure is fine, so I'm not going to make any adjustments here. And white balance also looks fine, so nothing to do here. And so we can just go right into editing. And what I'm going to do is just try to bring out some of the details in the moon, because they're always a little bit soft, right? The raw images, because raw images are intended to be edited. They're not intended to just come straight out of camera and show them. You really, if you have a raw image, you need to edit them for sharpening and denoising and color. All these things need to come into play because it's just raw data. It hasn't been processed, unlike, you know, your JPEGs that come out of straight out of camera. So there's a lot of different sharpening tools in DxO, and sharpening sharpening and I would say contrast are really the same thing. So a lot of times I'll go to the light panel and make adjustments there, which will give you a higher perceived sharpness of the image. Sharpness in of itself is pretty much baked in. Whatever your lens and camera is capable of in terms of pixels and the quality of the lens itself, you know, the sharpness coming from that, coming out of that image is baked in. It is what it is. So we use tools, contrast tools and sharpening tools. Sharpening tools are just another way of looking at contrast. It's just a slightly different algorithm. But DxO does have optics modules designed specifically for camera body lens combinations. So in this case, it would be the OM1 Mark II and the 100 to 400. So they do have optical corrections that are intelligent, that will sharpen where it needs to be sharpened and not sharpen where it doesn't need to be. So you get a nice uniform sharpness, or you know, it also eliminates vignetting and, you know, some minor distortions that might come out. So it's really one of their signature tools is the optics module, which I've already applied here in my basic preset. So I'm just going to increase the clear view here, which again is just another way of contrast, but it's designed to minimize haze, basically. And I'm going to go with the micro contrast. And I have a fine contrast slider here. You might notice I never use this in any of my live stream editing, because this is something that is added if you purchase DxO Film Pack separately. So I never use it because a lot of people just buy Photolab. So I try to use only the tools that you get with Photolab, which is, you know, just about everything here except little things like this, the fine contrast. So I'm going to back this off. That looks a little bit unnatural. And I'm going to punch in. Okay, so we're getting there. Now let's go over to the details panel and see if I can maybe back off the noise reduction a little bit. Oh, you know what? There's a little green arrow down here. Let me download the optics module, because it doesn't just load every optics module. When you open an image, and if DxO doesn't have that optics module loaded already, you have to download it from their website. So let me do that, and you might even see immediately an improvement in this image. Yeah, there we go. So this did a lot right there. So I'm going to just push the details. I'm very aggressive with the details one. Usually I just push it to 100%, except in very, very noisy images. Then you may want to have a little more finesse to these sliders, but in a very clean image like this, you can be pretty liberal. I'm going to see the unsharp mask on and off. That's not really doing much, but I'll just expand the radius, because what I want to do is sort of bring out some of the dust on the moon from these craters. Just want to bring those out just a little bit more. Okay, it's starting to look a little bit too crispy, so let me back this off a little bit right there. And I'm going to use the loop tool to really jump in and get a closer look at my editing. And the loop tool includes the deep prime module, because when we're looking at it without the loop, we're not seeing the deep prime being applied. So I think we can do a little better in this area. So I'm going to just back off the radius right about there. Because I want to bring out the details, but I don't want it to look crispy. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I'll just crop in a little tighter. I don't need to do any local adjustments. And we'll center that best we can. And let's export. So I'm going to export to the same folder. Make sure I don't have any resizing. When you export, generally you want to export as sRGB for display on, on the web, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, whatever. However you share your images online, you want to export as sRGB. All right, and that's it. Oops. So we'll come back here. And I can look at the progress of the export here. Typically it takes 15 or 20 seconds on my computer. I have a pretty jacked up computer, or highly spec computers, so they usually export pretty quickly. Older computers, this can take a minute or two, but if the deprime and export is taking more than a couple of minutes, you may need to upgrade your computer if you want better performance. All right, so let me reset this, and then we'll do a side-by-side comparison. So I'm going to set this as the reference. And we'll just look at the difference. I think that came out pretty awesome. Look how much detail we were able to bring out on all the individual craters. And again, it's a little bit subjective. I'm sure the moon isn't really this crispy, but I think it looks really good, especially along the edges. And this is one of the best times to take a picture of the moon, when you got a little bit of a shadow here to bring out some of the details in the craters. So that came out great. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this one here is from William. Okay, that's Larry. This is William. Okay, we have a street scene at a bus stop. And I think horizon looks good. Really interesting lighting. So I'm going to bring out some of the light in here. I might need to do a slight perspective correction. It just feels a little bit off. But that's because of the way the street is. It looks like this is going up a hill. But this line looks a little bit crooked here. So let's apply basic preset first and see if that corrects any of that. No. So let's do a slight geometry horizon correction. I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, that looks about right. And then composition-wise, we have this little bit of foreground here leading into the scene. We have this sidewalk, which I don't know if this is that important. And then these lights in the background. So let me think about a little tighter crop, because there's a lot of negative space here on the sidewalk that just doesn't really do much. I don't know if I need to see the street lights in the back. I may not even need that much of the bus. Maybe right about there. Now it feels a little out of balance. We got some negative space here, but then it's filled in up here. I always like to think about the balance of the image. And it's, again, kind of subjective. This little light in the corner. Let me just come in just a little bit tighter. Okay, a little bit lower. Okay, I think that feels pretty well balanced. I still a little bit too much on this left side. Let me try 4x3. I'm sorry, 5x4. Or maybe a 3x2. Okay, not bad. If I come in. Okay, I like that. All right. Now, with the lighting, Alexa, stop. My Alexa just went off. Okay, let's see. So now we can see the lighting in here a little better. This is a little bit hot. This is definitely clipped. And I want to bring out the bus a little more. It's a little bit dark. So let's just do a control point. And just bring up the exposure here. Like that. How about up here? Is there anything here? Yeah, a little bit up in here. Want a little more light. And how about in the back? Okay, I like that. And then the headlights, I'm going to make a little crispier. So I'll do another control point. Make a new mask. I'm just going to come in nice and tight. And I'm going to do that with clear view and micro contrast. Okay. This mirror might need a little light. Let me go back to the original mask. I'll use the same. No, that's not going to do it. How about right in here? Let's push the highlights a bit. And the midtones. And I'm working with selective tones down here now. And I always like to try to make this as straight a line as possible. All right, I like that. And then got this guy's foot down here. Let me see if I can just bring that out a little bit. Like so. Maybe a better way to do this is just brighten this whole area. Right here. I'll back this off. Brighten this whole area down here. And then I'm going to darken the background a little bit with a new mask. I'll just drop some around there. Try not to get on this guy too much. Okay, I think that's it. I'll export that. And let's reset. And we'll compare. All right, so clearly this is the before, this is the after. So the biggest difference is really the crop and straightening the horizon a bit. And then just minimizing the light in the background just a little bit and emphasizing more light here in the front. And then inside the bus, I like these colors in here, this blue. It's a nice contrast to the red bus itself, and it kind of goes with this guy's blue jacket. And I like the foot action down here. That's primarily the reason I brighten this area here. But I think that looks pretty good overall. So nice, really nice street shot there. And then the crop, I think, worked out really well, balanced. Because this is just too much for me. I like a nice tighter crop, only including the elements that really are important to the scene or add information that would be useful. All right, let's go to the next one. I have a bird shot. This one caught a grasshopper or something. So this one will be pretty straightforward. I just need to apply basic preset. And then we're going to do maybe a 5x4 crop and just come in. Let's try 3x2. Give a little bit more room there. I don't know if we really need this bird because it's out of focus, but I do like that it's there. It's just on a different focal plane. So the question is the bird more distracting than it is interesting? I think it's more interesting with the bird in it. Let me, I'll leave it in there. But I'm not sure. I think I'll take it out. It's just blurry. So let's try. Let's just do a tighter shot in on this one. Oh, sorry. I got to get the door. Hold on. I'll be right back. I'm sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I think it's better without the other bird. All right, so let me go on the loop tool and just see what the details look like. We need to definitely improve on that. So let's do, I don't think we have an optics module for this lens yet. Doesn't look like it. So we're not going to get the optimal sharpness out of this lens because this is a really new lens, the 50 to 200. So I'm just going to have to manually do it with the unsharp mask like this. And let's back off. No, a little more, right about there. Let's see, I'm going to push the threshold up just a touch. Give it a little bit extra punch here. Now, the unsharp mask is a great tool, but it's no substitute for the optics module. The optics module would have done an excellent job here. I think that's about the best I can do. Let me see. Just back off some of the offset, maybe. All right. All right, that's better. Let me look again. Okay, now let's work with the exposure a bit. I'm just going to click the smart lighting and let's brighten this up just a tiny bit. I'm going to darken the background. So let me select the bird. And then we'll invert that. Let's just bring this down a bit. And I'm going to brighten it again. I don't want to do too much, but that looks good right there. And let's work on the eye, because I'm getting a little bit of haloing. I may have to go back and adjust the background darkness again. Let's bring up the details and color in the eye, a little bit of micro contrast. Okay. Go back to the background again. We'll put it right about there, about one stop. Then let's add a vignette. So to do a vignette, you just put a control point wherever you want. Typically, I like it to go around the subject. And then turn your sliders down to 0, the chroma and luma, and then invert it. Whoops, I already inverted it. Let's invert it. Then just bring in the, did I click something? Something's not right. Did I click this? Oh, there we go. I accidentally clicked this hole puncher. Let's just bring the vignette in. And I'm going to warm up the background a bit. Let me go back to the background. The background's a little bit too cool. Okay. Let me export this and see how this came out. Set this as the reference. Let's reset it. Okay, so in the original image, I just did a heavy crop here because this bird's just not in the same focal plane. Subjective choice, I just felt like it was a little bit distracting. And then if we punch in, we can check the fine details and noise reduction and all of that. We're going to have to wait for DxO to come out with the optics module for this lens to really get the best out of it. But that's about the best I could do just using the existing sharpening tools, bringing out a little color in the eye, and getting rid of the noise. So if we do it more of a slider view, that's the before and that's the after. But I think that came out pretty nice. Okay. Let's do the next one. And okay, we have church. So let me apply basic preset. And that fixed a lot of the lens distortion. And again, you know, the challenge a lot of times with architecture and buildings is you really have, you know, you can't go eye level with the building. You're usually on the ground. So you're always going to have this sort of skewing, you know, trapezoidal type distortion where the top is smaller than the bottom. Now you can correct for that 100%, but sometimes that looks a little bit weird, right, if you correct for it too much. So I'll give you an example. I'll go over here to the perspective corrections and just click on the automatic. And you can see it straightened it in two directions, both the vertical plane and the horizontal plane. So vertical, horizontal, but also the third dimension. And now it looks kind of weird. So a lot of times what I do is I just back it off, the intensity, until it looks a little bit more natural, but corrects it so that it doesn't look like you're too far off. So if we look at the before and after, that's the before, and that's the after. So we just need to crop in a little bit more and get rid of this building on the left. And I think the horizon, we're good. Yeah, all these doors should be pretty much level. We need a little bit more this way. Okay, good. All right, so that's the perspective or the geometry. And like I said, I always like to do that first. We have a little bit too much room on this left side, and I'm going to fix that by getting rid of some on the bottom here. So we're going to crop in a little tighter from this corner. And I think that works well. So now we have a line coming from this bottom right corner into the frame. We have the vertical, and we have it level. So I think we're okay. Now the lighting is pretty dynamic here. We have a lot of shade here, and then we have some strong sunlight here. The shading coming obviously from buildings that are in front of this that are out of frame. So I'm going to brighten up this shadowy area. Just so it's a little bit closer to what we have here with these very strong highlights. Thinking, should I just push the shadows? Let me try the smart lighting. That helped a little. Let's push the shadows a bit. Okay, that's better. And then we'll just click on the automatic micro contrast. But this shadow area, I want to warm it up just a bit. So I'm going to just use a control line. Just give it a little bit of warmth. Put the eyedropper right on the brick. So we were at 56. Wow, I have to warm this up quite a bit. And again, I'm being very subjective here. And let me tighten up the lumen mask so it doesn't affect. I show the mask. I don't want the warmness to pass into the other brighter areas. I just want the warmth here in the shadows. I think right about there. Yeah, actually that looks okay. I'm masking pretty much everything in the shadows and giving it a little warmth. And let's push the brightness just a bit more. I'm going to turn off this mask. Let's just do a linear push. Oh, too much. It's getting a little soft, so it needs a little bit of clear view. Maybe some micro contrast. Okay, let's make the sky a little more dramatic. So I'm going to make a new mask. We can just select the sky with the AI tool and just add some drama in the sky with some micro contrasts and a slight pull on the highlights. And then I'm going to go back and on a global basis, I'm going to make the image brighter. Maybe a quarter stop. And now I think I want to temper the highlights a bit up here. So let me do selective tone. And let me go to the color. I try a couple of variations here. I think vivid look best, but I'm going to back off a little bit of that yellow and orange. Just a tiny bit. Let me just tighten this up a bit. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is work on the glass. And I like to just, normally I do that with control points. Let me try, yeah, let me try this. And then I'll do a sub. And we'll just add some, we'll do one more here. Oops, I meant to do that as a sub mask. So click this. And I'm going to add some clear view and micro contrast here. Maybe pull it in a bit. Okay. I just like the glass to look a little glassier. Actually, this looks like glass in here too, so add one more sub mask. Let's try the AI tool. Oops, I think we did too much. It's not getting in there, so let's just use a control point. All right, let's see how that looks. Not bad, a little bit too dark overall. All right, let's call it there. I'm sorry if you guys can hear me drinking my coffee. That's one of the things with this microphone. It's a little bit sensitive to everything, but the audio sounds better overall. Okay, let's reset this, and we'll do a side by side. Set this as the reference. All right, so there's the before and after, and I think all the edits I did kind of speak for themselves, right? Just some perspective corrections, bringing out the sky and balancing the image with respect to, you know, the left side and the right side, and just accentuating the windows just a little bit more and warming up the shadows. So it looks, I think it looks a little more natural, kind of. Arguably, you know, leaving the shadow area here a little bit cooler may not have been a bad choice either. But I decided to go ahead and warm it up. I might, if I were to continue editing this, I might back this off a little bit, the warmth here. It's just a little bit too warm, but overall I think that's a decent edit. And let's just do a split view and see how we did with the finer details. And I think we did okay, particularly the brickwork. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And the windows. All right, not bad. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, we have some ducks. So let's apply basic preset. And clearly the horizon is crooked. So let's just eyeball that. I mean, there is a tool. Let me just demonstrate this tool. There's a straight line tool where I can just kind of select here and hit enter. And that'll straighten it for me. Now, let's see. I think, again, we have a relatively shallow depth of field because this is out of focus and then these are in focus. So with this camera, this is a full frame. Let's see, and you're trying to keep your ISOs down. All your settings look pretty good, except my focus point would have probably been closer up here, or maybe on this duck. And that way, everything from this duck back will be in focus, and then a lot of this will probably be in focus. So I would choose a little bit closer focus point on this image so that I could get everything at least look like it's in focus. Because with these out of focus, it's just a little bit, yeah, it's not ideal. Is that over there? Oh, that's the back of a duck. He's turning his head around. All right. Let me think. I might do a pretty tight crop here. And just come in. Center those ducks there. That doesn't look right. Okay, I think that'll be my crop. So let's work with the water. Just going to use a control line. Let's go up to here. And just make the water a little darker, maybe a little cooler. And then we'll temper the highlights on the ducks. So we'll make a new mask and use some control points. And just pull the highlights in a bit. Maybe a little more. Okay, so I'm going to bring in some of the texture in the stones here. I wonder if the AI would just select that right there. No, it's going to select a rock. Oh, actually, that's not bad. Okay. Throw on some clear view and micro contrast. Oh, too much. And let's throw in a little bit of vibrancy. Because the rocks do have some nice colors, but I'm going to push the reds and oranges. Like that. Maybe give it a little warmth. Not too much. Just 200 Kelvin. There we go. I don't know about this duck. I wonder if I can brush him out. Okay, good enough. Maybe select a different spot. Something over here. Okay. Let's try that one more time. A little bit larger area. Okay. This duck too. I don't know if I can remove this duck though. I'm gonna try a clone. I don't think I can do it. Kind of, close enough. Let's fix that leaf. I'm gonna hide this. This other side. Okay. Let's export that. Maybe a little vignette too. So, and then we'll be done. Let's invert that. All right. compare. Okay, so the original, we captured a much wider scene. And typically I like, when I have a wide scene like that, I like everything to be in focus, because there's no way to isolate an individual subject when you're shooting something that wide, with that field of view. But in this case, we can crop in a bit, right? Because we have 47 megapixels to work with. When we have such a wide scene, we can just kind of crop in and still get a decent image. So I think this works much better. I could have spent a little more time in getting this a little bit nicer, but you get the idea over here. Like, I don't like the reflection right here, but that's fine. And I think the scene balances well. They're basically front and center, but then the balance here still works, and bringing out the colors in the rocks, I thought was a nice touch. So that's the final image. I think that came out pretty nice. All right, this was submitted last week, but I didn't get a chance to get to it for whatever reason. I don't think I did. Yeah, because there's no editing here. So let's apply basic preset. And it's a little bit off here. You can see the horizon. So let's try perspective correction. Okay, good. And then let's make sure the railing is center. I mean, you did a good job, with the geometry actually straight out of camera. It's tough to get these kind of scenes just perfectly centered and aligned. I think that, because this railing kind of crisscrosses too, so let's just come in here. Come in here a bit. There's still some minor perspective corrections, but this works right here. It's pretty close. Still a little bit off in these corners. Let's see, here and here. But I think that's as good as we can get it. And then let's bring out some of the work in the marble. So maybe I think we can do this globally. Let's just do a clear view and micro contrast. And exposure, we'll make this a little brighter. And I like the very subtle shade transitions from like this warmer marble back here to this, white and bluish marble. That could be the lighting, but most likely the marble is a different color. Based on what I'm seeing right here. Okay, maybe pull the blacks in a bit. And make a straight line there. Back off the clear view. And then let's bring out this door in the background a bit. So we'll just do a linear push. Okay, I'm going to use the loop tool because we're at a pretty high ISO. So I just want to check. Where are we on lens sharpening? Let's crank that up. Crank this up a bit. I may have to do a little more with the unsharp mask. Yeah, a little bit there. And then maybe a little bit extra push on the noise reduction. Just a little bit. I don't want to lose the details. Okay. That looks pretty good. A little bit more push, but then some micro contrast, I think. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Oops. Just looking at the original. Okay, we just need to make it a little brighter. Because I don't want it to look like we're in a dark cave or anything. Maybe temper the highlights on that side a little bit. We'll just use a control line. All right, we'll call it there. And I see a question from Adam. Says, does DxO allow you to blur the background yet? Yeah. I'll demo that for you. I think the next image might be a good way to demonstrate that. All right, so let's reset this and we'll compare it to the output. All right, so in this case, I have the original on the right and my edit here on the left side. Basically, I just made it brighter and fixed the, perspective distortions the best I could. I'm still a little bit off, and it's difficult to do, unless you're using, a gearhead or something on a, and if you can be on a tripod, you could get this closer so that it's better. But this is really good. I assume you're handheld here. But yeah, just brightening it up basically and fixing the perspective correction, then bringing out the detail for the marble. And also emphasizing the separation in colors. I think it looks really good. We can do a slider and just kind of come in really tight, and you can see the difference and how much detail, we can bring out with DxO. Right there. Let's go up to the door up here, which is clearly on a different focal plane, but yeah, that came out really, really nice. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Oh, this looks like Conowingo. Oh, this from Shri. Hey, Shri. We were there together yesterday, actually, at Conowingo. All right, so let's apply a basic preset. And let's do a little bit of horizon correction. I always like to do geometry first. And I think a square crop. No, 4:3 or 3 by. Let's stick with 4:3. Aspect ratio. The question is, do we want to keep? Yeah, let's keep some of the reflection down here in the water. Because if I crop all the way in, there's just not enough pixels there for me to crop in that tight. But we're looking good so far. So let's fix the water. If I do the AI tool, and one more submask maybe in here. Not quite. All right. we'll leave that alone. So we'll do some clear view. Let's reduce the contrast a bit. Pull the blacks in. About like that. And let's do the same thing for the rocks in the background. I think, I guess another AI tool? No, not really. It's not able to grab all the rocks at once, so we'll use a linear or control line. And let's tighten up the chroma a bit. And just pull that in. Okay, now the eagles themselves, we'll need to temper the highlights and then bring up the shadows a bit on the eagles. So let's do a new mask. The AI should be able to easily pick out the eagles. There's one, and another submask, there's one. We'll just push the shadows. A little bit of clear view and some micro contrast. Raise the exposure a bit. And I'll come back to the white feathers. I think that's about all I want to do there. And let's do a new mask for the white feathers. I'm going to temper those highlights. I think they're clipped though. Typically, if I'm paying attention, I like to dial in a -1 or -2 when I'm shooting eagles so that I can bring in the feather detail. I can see here you're like at 0. And your shutter speed's a little bit low. I think at least 1/2000th of a second, especially when they're kind of flying like that. But I was shooting a lot at 1/3200th of a second. Okay, but yeah, we still got some of the highlights in there. That's good. And then let's see if I can do some vibrancy or saturation on the yellows. Spread that out a bit. I'm going to try and bring out that one eye a little better. This one here. Don't know if I can, but I'm going to try. Yeah, there we go. Maybe do this. Just spread that out for the beak a little bit. All right, that's good. Now we can see the eye clearly. All right, I think that's about all I would do there. Let me check my sharpening and loop tool. What? This is the 300F4, so we should have, yeah, right here. Let me turn this off. Yeah, on is good. We'll just spread that out just a bit more. Okay. The water's a little bit too crispy. Let me go back to that. Let's let's back off this clear view. And we'll just use the exposure sliders. Okay, I think that works. And then I'm going to export this, and then I'm going to demo how to blur the background. Let me export that. Okay, reset. And use that as a reference. Okay, so the original here, obviously, these are way in the background. Nice shot, but these birds are just too far away, really. Because you're at an effective, I think, 800 millimeters, right? I forget what lens you had. You had a 300 effective focal length. Yeah, so you're at 840 millimeters, and there's still just this like 1 megapixel in the frame. So that's why I didn't crop all the way in. There's just, you know, not enough pixels there on the birds. But let's do a split view. And yeah. But the main thing was really bringing out the one eye on that. Whoops. What happened to my split view? There we go. I was just trying to bring the one eye out on this eagle, because this one is pretty well defined. Where did it go? It's way down here. Whereas here it's a little bit soft, right? So it's hard to do a split view when things are moving around. Can I slide this one individually? No. So let's just back off. Split view is not. We'll do it this way. But from a, you know, the way I cropped it, you wouldn't come in that close. But I think that looks pretty good. You know, bringing up the shadows and the micro contrast so that you can see the details in the feathers, bringing out the eye, and then just darkening the water a little bit and the background so that we go from like this very wide field here to a much tighter crop with a little bit of a shadow down here. So let me go back to the original, and the way I would blur the background on this, if I wanted to do that, let me go back to my edit, is let me make a new mask, and then we'll take a linear line here, and I'm going to blur it down to about here, because the eagles are right over about here, so you have to kind of give a little thought about your distances. So I'm going to blur it down to about here. So I'm going to go down here. Where's the blur tool? Right here. I can do about, I don't like to do more than 25. I think on this one I'll do probably about 20. And that looks about right. And then what I need to do, because you can see it's blurring the eagles too, right? Is just create a submask. I'm going to use the AI tool again and just select the eagle. Do another submask, select this eagle. And then just use this hole puncher tool. They call it invert shape. I like to think of it as a hole puncher. And there. So now we've blurred the background, right? So there's the before. And there's the after. Okay. So that's how I would blur the background for this. And again, the blurring tool, I try to keep it, you know, right around 20, 25 is a max. Because sometimes it'll start to halo and do weird things if you try to do too much. All right, let's go to Jeff's, a couple of ducks here. or geese. These are geese. Or maybe they're juvenile swans. I don't know what they are, but they're beautiful birds. A little bit cut off down here on the foot, so that's unfortunate. But let's apply basic preset and do a slight horizon tilt, maybe 1 degree. And we'll come into the left side a bit. And then let's select the bird, submask bird. We'll just brighten them up. Let me invert them. I'm going to invert that one. Invert that one. Does that work? No, I can't invert two at the same time. So we'll leave it the way. I'll just brighten them up. Maybe about a stop. Then we'll go to the global and reduce it. Roughly a stop. Maybe not that much, maybe about right there. And then let me back this off a little bit. Okay, add some warmth to the image. So where's my white balance tool? Up here. Where are we at? 57. Let's go about 6,000. All right, let me work on the eyes. So get a new mask and a control point. Oh, wow, they got teeth. Isn't that interesting? Spread this out a bit. Yeah, they do have a little bit of a pupil there. And some micro contrast. And we'll do the same thing with this duck's eye. Ooh, their eye doesn't need quite as much, so I'm going to do a separate one. Their eye is blue. That's interesting. It's just a little bit of push on the shadow. Contrast, clear view. All right, I think, let me go back to the ducks. I'm going to select both at the same time. I think I am. And I'm going to add some micro contrast here, just to bring the texture of the feathers out. I can even push the sharpness a bit. Just going to just give a little more contrast overall. All right, let's see where we're at. I'm going to add a little more light in the foreground. So we'll use a control line. I'm going to put the pointer on the green eyedropper and then tighten up the chroma mask and just bring a little more light into the foreground. Yeah, it needs about a stop. But a little warmth, maybe a tiny bit too. Not so much. Okay. Let me back that off. I'm just gonna add some contrast manually this way. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing, kind of, in the background, but opposite. I'm just going to make it darker. And you find, let me see if I can tighten that up a bit. And just bring that down a bit. All right. Let's export that. And Heather says, if you have a teleconverter on the lens, would you see that in the metadata? And yeah, because typically I would see it here. Let me see. I have to check. I thought I've seen it before. I mean, well, this one doesn't have the teleconverter on it. That's why. This is just a straight 300. But let's look at this and I'll come back to your question. So we'll set that as a reference. And reference image. Yeah. Use this as the reference. I reset it and we'll compare it against. Okay, there we go. All right, so yeah, it was a pretty good shot to begin with, so not really a lot of editing here. Just brightening up the foreground a little bit and the ducks, and then making the background a little darker, slight horizon correction, and then bringing out the eyes just a little bit more. And I also brought out the shadows in the face a little bit more as well. I think that works pretty well. This would probably go, if we want to look at the fine details. Let's move that over. But I think, yeah, I think that came out pretty good. Really nice feather detail. You know, the 300 f4 Pro is an amazing lens. Just unbelievably sharp. And the DxO optics module really makes a difference. Okay, if we go back to this one from Shri, and look at the data, you can see it here. It says the 300 f4 with the TC teleconverter, 1.4x. So it is in the EXIF data in the lens description. So it just kind of gets tacked on at the end there in the lens data. Okay, let's see. Next one here from John. All right. Wow, this is a nice tight shot. 150 millimeters. Let's apply a basic preset. And I'm going to do some perspective correction. Feels a little crooked, so I'm going to just back that off this way. And let's do maybe just a tiny bit of a crop. I don't think we need all that space up above the buildings. I do like the space on the left side. I think that works. And we'll do a control line. About like this. Add some clear view, pull the blacks in a bit. Maybe not that much. And then let's just cool it off a tiny bit. Okay. Now I want to temper some of the highlights on the buildings because they're a little bit strong. So let's make a new mask. I think I can just use a control line again. Let's come down this way. I'm going to put this right on the brightest part and just pull the highlights in. Midtones. Maybe about there. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to make the grass a little darker. So let me go back to my color wheel. I don't know if I can isolate the grass enough. We'll try. Yeah, it's affecting the building. I don't want to change the building, so I'm going to have to do it differently. Let's just do control points. Let me get rid of this. Actually, control line might be okay. Let me try that again. Do a control line. Tighten up the chroma just a hair. And just bring the exposure down. Tiny bit. Okay, let me go back to... Oh, you know, I accidentally deleted my control line for the buildings. Let me make a new one. Okay, let's see where we're at. Whoops. I think that's all we need. So I'll export that one. Set this as the reference. Let's reset it. Compare it against the output. All right, so my edit here on the left this time and the original on the right. It's a nice clean shot, not much editing needed to be done. I just need to accentuate the water a bit and temper the highlights on the building and just make the grass and the greens here a little bit darker. See if we can see the finer details. I didn't really work with the details too much, but DxO did a pretty good job. You know, mainly I wanted to temper the highlights here. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Particularly on the grass, right? There was a lot of softness here, but over here you can see it did bring out a lot of the details very nicely. Okay, very nice image. Very, very calm. All right, let's see. We got a couple more. So, what's this? This is a deer, I think. It's really dark. The color of this deer, whatever this is, I think it's a deer. I don't know what it is. But I will, we need to straighten the horizon first. Let's do a basic preset. And, oh, I need the optics module. What is this? This EM5 Mark III. Oh, the 15mm. Nice. Love that. Boy, you were really close to this animal, whatever this is. Okay, now we can do a basic preset. And I'm going to straighten the horizon because the trees are all slanted to the right. I want the tree to at least be straight. Okay. Let's do a slightly square crop right about there. And let's select the animal. I'll just brighten them up a little bit. Maybe a half a stop. Let's go back and darken everything else, about a half a stop. Bring this guy up again. And then let's bring out the, down here, let's get some more light in here. And a little bit of clear view and micro contrast. Let's add a vignette. Okay, a little bit more light on the face. Okay. I just feel like maybe the vertical is not the way to go. Let me crop it horizontally. Yeah, that works. Let me double check my vignette mask here. Oh, I think we're okay. Maybe a little bit less. And then I'll check the fine details on this. Maybe we'll just do a little bit there and a little bit of unsharp. Spread that just a bit. Okay. I'll export that. And reset compared to the output. Okay, my original on the left, I'm sorry, my edit here on the left, and here's the original. Vertical crop was an interesting choice, but I decided ultimately just to go horizontal. And I would have, wow, you're really close to this animal. In fact, this might be your foot down here. But anyway, I would have tried to get a little bit lower to the ground in terms of composition and did a horizontal. But let's just do a quick pixel peep on the details. And I think that's, I might back off the sharpening a little bit, but I think overall that's pretty good. And it was important to brighten the face here, I think. It was just too dark in this frame. So just adding a little brightness to this whole area, including the grass, I think worked out pretty well. But yeah, we got some, we brought some nice detail back, I think, overall. All right. And let's see. Oh, I see Sir is here. Oh, I'm glad you like the edit. You had 2 more images, Sir. I'll have to do those next week. 'Cause I'm running out of time today. Okay, this looks like... This is almost perfect. Let me apply basic preset. We just have to add a little bit of drama and color. I wonder if I can get the AI to select the water, or if I have to... Yeah, pretty much. Not bad. Right in here. So we'll get rid of this one. I'm going to bring the water in a bit. About like that. Okay. Composition, I don't know. I don't know if I want to see that fence line, but I like this tree. There's a little bit of a fence here I'm not crazy about. But I'm not sure I can center her on the bridge, but I can center the bridge. The bridge is pretty well centered. So I think, yeah, I think I like that crop a little better. All right, let's just darken some of the background and bring out some of the color. So I'm going to brighten up the center behind this tree and then darken some of the other areas. Let's just do a control point. Maybe like this. And let's pull the blacks in. About like that. Tighten this up a bit. There we go. Oops, I think that's good. About here. Too much. Let's make a new control point. I don't want it quite as dark in here. Just a little bit more subtle. Need a little bit more there. Oops, that didn't work. Okay. And then see if I can brighten up that center just a little bit. Like that, a little tighter on the chroma. Let's give it a little more extra warmth. I'll spread that. And just make that brighter. How about down here? Okay, let's temper the highlights on her hair. All right, I'm going to bring out the texture on the bridge. Let's see if the AI tool picked the bridge out. Oh, not quite. How about with a rectangle tool? Yeah, there we go. That just needs some micro contrast. And we'll give it a little bit of magenta and warmth. I like that right there. Okay. One or two minor distracting elements like this leaf. Just temper that a bit. Let me temper this, the highlights in here. I think these are clipped, but I'll just bring it in. And then a slight vignette. Invert that. We'll just bring back a little bit of detail in the shadow areas. Okay. Okay, let's call it there. Oops, wrong button. Okay. All right, so the original on the left, my edit on the right. And yeah, it's really just about bringing contrast and focusing the light more in the center. Only other thing, I didn't bring out the colors too well there because there's some colors of flowers here, and then her kind of purplish shirt, and then these people over here. I should go back and bring that out, bring out a little more saturation on those two things, the flowers and the people. But other than that, I think the edit is pretty much what I would do. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so looks like Anthony sent me a pre-processed raw, meaning it's been processed at the very least with Deep Prime, as indicated by the file name. And then also he sent, I think, his edit of this image, which is just basically a slight crop. So I'm going to work with this image here. I don't have to do really too much. The optical presets and everything have already been applied. So I don't need to further denoise or do anything, but I just want to maybe temper the highlights and think about the overall composition. So I'm going to darken this background a little bit more, temper the highlights here, and then make the water a little bit glossier. I think that's all that needs to be done. Let's move this here. We'll back off the Luma a bit and the chroma. Just do that. guess that works. It's a little bit too dark. Not sure. We need, we'll do that. And then let's temper the highlights on this building here, including the reflection. Bring in some micro contrast. And okay, that's good. And then the background, this tree line, let's just pull, let's start with the blacks. Maybe that's all I need to do. A slight push there. Okay, I'm going to bring out some of the texture in that building. I don't know if the AI tool can pull that off, but we'll try. Oops. Let me try that one more time. It grabbed the whole, that almost got it. That's close enough. All right, good. Just going to bring out some of the details here. Temper the highlights a bit. Just give it a little bit of a push. And let's give it some vibrancy. Maybe go back and the other way. Try and separate some of the tones a little bit. Like that. Okay. We're good here. Let's give it a little bit of crispiness. Yeah, that looks good. And then overall, some vibrancy. Well, let's try a different color. Vibrant. Yeah, let's do vibrant. And a little bit of push and vibrancy. Go back to this building. It's a little more push. In the shadows. And this other building, we need to just temper that a bit more. Okay, I think I'm done. And reset. Use this as the reference. And compare to, ooh. Oh, there it is. Okay. So, yeah, there's the original on the left. Here's my edit on the right. Just a little more saturation and contrast, right? I don't know if cropping this wider to like a 16:9 or something like that, but let me try. Ultra wide. I mean, something like this would work for me too. You know, a wider crop so that we're more focused on just the building instead of having so much water in the foreground. I think this works a little better if we just want to look at the buildings. So that's my final edit there. I think that looks pretty good right there. And then if we compare that to Anthony's edit, I think this is his edit. I'm not 100% sure. Because he also did a slight crop on his. But I don't know if you did any editing to the buildings. But I really like to bring out the colors as much as I can without making it look oversaturated. All right, let's see. We have some weird looking duck here from Paul. Let's do a basic preset. Let's do we'll keep it 4x3, but I just want to just center the bird a little bit more. The eyes stand out pretty well already. We just need to temper the highlights, I think, on the bird. So let's temper the highlights if possible. Yeah, a little bit there. Let's give the eye a little bit of gloss. And I don't need to add any brightening. It's already pretty bright. And then let's select the bird and darken the background a bit. So new mask, AI, I'll just use the rectangle tool. And just brighten it a tiny bit. And then come back and darken the background a tiny bit. Let's add a vignette. Maybe about here. Invert that. And come in a bit. Okay. Feathers look a little blue. I don't know. Let me warm up the image overall. And then give some vibrancy maybe. Okay. All right, I think that's it. So let's use the loop tool and just kind of check some of the finer details. Oh crap, I forgot to download the optics module. Let me get that in there. I keep forgetting to do that. Holy crap, this is a 150 to 400. Wow, that's a nice lens. All right, there we go. Now let's just check some of our noise settings. Crank that up a bit. Let's go down here to the feathers, crank the detail up. Now I want to be careful with these sliders because we are at kind of a high ISO. 12,000. I guess right about there is good. Now let's go up to the eye and work with the unsharp mask. Maybe spread this out a bit. Okay. All right. Wow, these are really pretty feathers. Let's export that. And reset. Set this as the reference. Okay, the original on the left, my edit on the right. Yeah, just darken the background and a little more saturation on the bird. And I think that's kind of the core of the edit, and a slight crop. So let's see if a split view will work. Yeah, I think that came out great. Really cleaned up the noise. Maybe temper the highlights here a little bit on the head. The wing here is just slightly clipped, I think, in the white areas here. But I think we did pull out some nice detail and color otherwise. You know, the details on the feathers here, on the back, all in the wing. Yeah, it looks great. Okay. One more, and then I'm going to check the folder, because I know some of you mentioned you sent your edits in, so we'll compare your edit to my edit here shortly. Okay. I have a lighthouse. Oh, a nice little reflection down here. That's kind of cool. Let's do a basic preset. We need to straighten the horizon. How about a perspective? No, let's just straighten the horizon a bit here. And then I'm going to crop out. Let's do a square. I think I'll crop out the top. And then let's rotate this. Wow, that's really weird looking. I'm not sure. Because I think, Heather, you said you sent another one in, and to pick the better of the two. But I'm going to start with this. I'll look at the other one. But I want to just experiment with this one a little bit, because it is interesting. I like that. I like this reflection. I don't think the square crop works, though. Let me try a 3x2. Okay. Work with these rocks a bit, some micro contrast, some clear view, and just brighten them up a bit. Maybe some vibrancy. And this top part just needs to be brighter. And the colors, okay. So let me look at my crop again. Yeah, we're centered pretty well. I just like to usually have a little bit more of a frame. Okay, I think that's all I would do with that one. And I'll talk about this in a second. Let me reset this. All right, so here's the original image on the right. It's still inverted. Let me, okay, so that's the original. I didn't really want to keep this. There's just too much gap between the two. When I have a reflection, I typically like the reflection and the subject to be pretty close together. But there's this huge gap between the reflection and the actual thing being reflected. So it's a little bit too much for me. So that's why I just cropped out the bottom part and then flipped it around. And I think this makes for a more interesting surreal image. Something like this. I think that's a much more interesting image because right off the bat it kind of looks a little bit like a painting, but then you have the rocks down here, which are a little bit sharper and crisper, that kind of like, well, okay, this is not a painting. What am I looking at? And then, it's a reflection. So the image raises a lot of questions right off the bat. Okay. Let's go to the, I'm going to go back to the download folder and see what's come in. Because you guys said you sent your edits in. So here's Dan's edit. Dan sent in 2 different edits. Okay, so we'll compare his to mine. 1 second, it's coming. And then here's the second image from Moxie Rowe, I guess Heather. And then Peter sent in a new image to edit. I don't know if I can get to that today. I'm running out of steam. Let's download Williams. Here's Paul's edit. I'm getting them all. Give me just a moment. Download. And then Shree's edit. Very similar to what I did. A lot of these. Okay. I think I got them all. And Peter, I will save yours for next week, Friday. All right, so let's go to, so I saw your second image that you submitted. It has kind of the same problem where there's too much gap between the reflection and the subject for me. So I think this edit that I did here that we're looking at is of the two, this is the one I would pick, and then this is how I would edit it. So let's see, this is I can't recall which one's my edit and which one's Paul's edit because they're so similar. But let's just compare. I think, yeah, this is Paul's edit, because you did a better job with the highlights. You tempered the highlights a little more than I did, because you can see more detail here in the wings, you know, in this bright part. I didn't bring that down as well as I could have. Ugh. I should have tried harder, because apparently there is some tones in here that you can use. Overall, though, I think this edit's a little bit too dark. I would just brighten the background a little bit more, but maintain the tones that you got on the bird. That's the only difference, I think. So basically, if I re-edit my image, if I re-edit your image, I would just tone this, you know, bring these highlights in more like you did. That would be the only thing I would do differently. But otherwise, yeah, pretty much identical. And then let's see. This was my edit. And I think this one was Dan's edit. So Dan cropped in a little tighter than I did, and brushed out the people walking back here, like did some corrections, right? Some brushing, healing brush or something. So, but you maintain the overall luminance, right? It's a little bit darker overall, but maintain the overall luminance. Whereas I tried to separate the luminance a little bit here in the center to be brighter, and then darker in the foreground, so that it sort of leads your eye to the center. You know, the center being the brightest part of the image, so making that more of the subject area in here. So that was my intent with my edit. Okay, and then you did a black and white version of it as well. And that looks good. That looks good. Basically, looks like a straight conversion to black and white. But the challenge I have with this edit is that this is the brightest part of the scene, so your eye kind of goes right here first. And then this person here in the middle is kind of an afterthought. But okay, but it looks good in black and white. I think I would just temper the brightness here and brighten the center. And again, you did a tighter crop, which I think works just as well, if not better. A little bit tighter crop is good. And then Shri sent his in. So this is my edit. I think that's Shri's edit there. Virtually identical. Wait. It's identical because it's my edit. Hold on. Here's Shri's edit. So very nice, Shri. I like your edit better. You did a really good job bringing out the eyes here on this bird that I was working on. My edit, I added the blur. You know, because someone had asked. The only thing with your edit, Shri, is I think you need to be a little bit more selective with the clear view and sharpening, because you made the background a little bit too busy relative, because you did an excellent job here on the eagles, but the background, you know, the bokeh and stuff, the out of focus areas are a little bit busy, which is actually a characteristic of the 300 f4. The background can be a little busy sometimes, so I tend to, on my edits, this is not a good example because I was showing how to do the blurry background, but on my edits, sometimes I reduce the micro contrast, but I'm really careful with the 300 f4 and the out of focus areas in the background, because they can be a little busy sometimes, as you're seeing in your image here. But yeah, excellent job on the eagles. Yeah, just ignore my edit here because there's some haloing and stuff that, I was just doing a quick edit to show the blurry background. Uh, Let me go back to the original. Let me fix the original real quick. I just have to get rid of this one. So if we compare, stop it. Hold on. But you see the difference? This is your edit over here, Shri. You see the difference in the background? Mine is a little bit softer. It's not quite as busy or as bright. Same thing with the water. I tempered the water a little bit more too. It's very subtle difference, but that's the only recommendation I would give. But you did an excellent job on your edit. It's a little bit tight on the left side. I don't know why I'm critiquing your edit. I'm just showing you the differences, right? Whereas mine is, because not everybody sees the same thing when they look at an image. So I just want to, I'm just pointing things out. I'm not criticizing. But it's much tighter here on the left side than on mine. But okay, I like your edit. I like your edit better on the Eagles. You did a better job, which is awesome. You guys are always doing better than me lately. Okay. Oh, you tried to blur the background. Okay. Just reading the chat. So yeah, just another way, rather than blurring it, just reduce the contrast. That's another thing you can do with the background. If you reduce the contrast, make it a little darker, that helps with the tempering, and then sliding the micro contrast slider with the 300 f4 lens, because the background can be a little busy sometimes, so you have to be conscious of that. But oh, you wanted me to critique it. Okay, so the only other thing is, all right, I'll point out a couple other things that I did differently. Is I straightened the horizon, right? Because your horizon is still a little bit crooked here. So straighten the horizon, lower the contrast, make the background a little darker, and that's kind of unique to the 300 f4 lens. And this goes back to knowing your gear and your lenses and your camera, right? And how to edit specifically to your gear. This is a good example. But okay, actually, why is this image here? It's not tight. Oh, because I didn't zoom properly. I actually cropped in a little bit tighter, and I didn't do a 16:9. And that's purely subjective. I don't need to critique the aspect ratio. But other than that, I don't really see any problems. I think you did a better job. This is a little bit bright in here. Maybe temper the brightness here in the wings. Because you can really see the detail, but it looks a little bit over processed. Okay, that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching me edit your photos. I hope you like some of the edits. As always, you guys, sometimes your edits are better than mine. It's no big surprise, but the idea being is I want you to see my workflow and see the tools and what the tools can do in Photolab. And I got through 14 or 15 images there in about 2 hours. So there's a few more that came in, but I'm gonna have to do those next week. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and you can support the stream by using the affiliate links down below, especially for Christmas. I have some Amazon and B&H affiliate links down there. If you guys are gonna buy anything, you can use those links or become a member, and or make a direct donation. But either way, thanks so much for joining me today, and I will be back tomorrow. Yeah, sorry about yesterday. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I went out to Conowingo yesterday, so I couldn't do the live stream yesterday. So I just set it for today. And I'll probably do another Photolab thing on Monday because of Cyber Monday, right? But you guys are awesome for sending your images in and trusting me to edit them. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.